Morning.
Morning.
Thank you so much, Kirsten from the Costa. Morning, everyone. You're a bit far away because I'm trying to get the view of Durban this morning because Kirsten's kindly let us sit here at the Pencil, which is absolutely beautiful at the top of Umhlanga Arch.
Yeah.
So Kirsten from the Costa, thank you so much for coming and sitting here with me this morning and actually hosting me for a change. It's lovely. Yeah, thank you. So just quickly, we've known each other for a really long time, actually. We met probably when your mum still lived in Durban North,
Right.
way back when,
Yeah.
and I was helping her sell her house long ago, probably about 10 or 12 years ago.
Yes.
That was before you even got to law.
Yes, absolutely. And, then we
And now
ended up
you're in a,
working together,
yes,
right,
exactly,
together as well,
yes,
so
yeah, and now you're a director in a law firm, so well
Yeah,
done, congratulations, what a journey it's been.
It has, yeah, it's been a lovely experience. And
Yes.
very exciting.
Yeah.
It's been nice to be able to work with all the best agents in town.
Oh,
as
yes,
well.
thank you, of course. And then last week we were at Sun City, which is obviously where you really got to see all of our Remax agents in full force.
Yes. Oh, what good fun we had.
It was amazing,
A bit of
yeah.
a party, you know?
Bit of a
Celebrate
party
all
and
the
celebrates
guys.
everybody, but also just to really see the greater scheme of things with Remax itself
Yes,
and how
yes.
amazing the company is and the bigger
Absolutely.
picture,
And
not
how
just our
well
little
attended.
office.
Yes,
Yeah.
so well attended. The convention
Yes.
was beautiful, and I think the feel for the business and the company and the Remax name, it was incredible.
Yeah,
It was lovely
definitely.
to be
And
part of it.
yeah, so thank you for joining us. It was great fun to have you there. And that's obviously where this conversation today came about, was because we were sitting on the beach at the Valley of the Waves, and an interesting scenario happened with one of my clients. So we were discussing it amongst a couple of us, because there were a couple of
Yeah.
attorneys at the time all on the beach with us. And Kirsten and I just thought, well, let's just chat about this, because Kirsten was the most neutral of everybody. So I thought, brilliant to have her come along. So the scenario was that, firstly, the seller's disclosure that gets signed when we do a mandate. What is the seller's disclosure? Because I'll go into that scenario a little bit more. But if you can explain, what is a seller's disclosure and how did it actually come about by law?
Okay, so the seller's disclosure is the document that needs to be annexed to your sale agreement. Which
Yes.
the seller completes in full, whereby they basically answer questions regarding the property as to the defects that potentially are on that property.
Okay.
Right? Prior to the enactment of the PPRA, which is the Property Practitioners Act,
Yes.
there was no requirement for this document to be in place.
Yes.
Right? So there was always the FOETSTOETS clause, and sellers were always encouraged to make disclosures in regard to any defects in their property. However, with the advent of that legislation, the disclosures annexure now is a document that agents need to have completed, and for all intents and purposes.
And it's whether it's an open mandate or a sole mandate, it's any mandate given to sell a property, it has to be signed.
That's correct. So, interestingly enough, it's not a requirement on private sales.
Okay.
And the reason behind that, necessarily in regard to the legislation, I can't tell you why that would be. However, where there's an agent or any property practitioner involved, they are required to put the disclosure
form through.
Yes.
And then does that form get signed when they are listing the property, or can it be signed at the time of an offer to purchase?
So it can be both.
Oh, okay.
Usually most agents will get it signed at the time of listing. However, it is always advisable, and we say to a lot of our clients that when you take your offer, it's best to go to your seller and say, right, this was the disclosure annexure you signed. It may be that you're only selling it 2 to 3 months later. And in that instance, has anything changed? Are there any additional disclosures to make? Have you potentially repaired some of the defects?
Okay. So just to get it updated, because when we're doing the sale agreement with, or the offer to purchase with the purchaser, there's a clause in there that says there's the disclosure, you've seen everything, and the seller has disclosed what they know about the property.
Yes.
Everybody accepts it, and then it all gets signed and off it goes.
Sure.
Okay. So this is where the scenario comes in, where 6 months later, property's been transferred, and I get the frantic phone call after the floods not floods, but more heavy rain, and part of the roof has collapsed. So that took me by surprise, because then they're going, well, on the seller's disclosure, they should have disclosed that the roof was rotten and this and that and whatever. And I'm going, hang on a minute. Let's just go back to basics, because it's 6 months down the line. And then they were asking for the entomologist's report, which they had already, but I went back and I got the entomologist's report. So that goes back to when we do the entomology inspection for wood borer and termites, etc., and then they'll come through and they'll say, okay, there is borer, we need to tent the house. If they see wood rot, for example, do they have to disclose that or not?
No, absolutely not. So an entomologist clearance certificate is strictly regarding borer beetle.
Okay.
Is there borer beetle in the property? Is there evidence that there was borer beetle in the property? Is there evidence that there is a nest or these insects that are going to hatch and come and eat the wood? That is the only obligation of an entomologist. That's what he looks for. So what they often will do is go up into the rafters and potentially poke the rafter, potentially, to see if it is, letting go or falling apart, or it's fragile because of borer beetle. However, if they go up into the rafters and they see that there is potentially damage in the roof, there's no obligation on them to go and disclose this to the seller, to the purchaser, or to the agent.
So I have had a couple of years ago 2 separate incidences of homes where the entomologist wouldn't put a tent on the roof because they felt that the trusses needed support. So there they did disclose it, and then everybody met halfway to get the roof repaired, and then they put the tent on, etc., etc.
That would be obviously for their protection. They don't want to put a tent on and then be the reason that they've damaged the roof. So that would be their reasoning for that. That wouldn't be because they feel obliged to make a disclosure. To the state of the roof. So
again, then for the entomologist, if they'd felt that it was unsafe at that point in time, they probably would have said, it's too unsafe to put a tent on, we're not doing it, and they would have disclosed. So at that point in time, theoretically, there was probably nothing wrong other than the borer,
or they didn't see
anything. So that was the first thing that we kind of all said, because she was like, let's have a look at the entomologist report, and clearly on the entomology report it actually was all clear on the outbuildings, because that was also one of the issues, which again, interestingly, there were 2 outbuildings on that property, and on the day of the inspection the owner had not given them access to those 2 outbuildings, so they had to come back and do separate inspections, which is quite interesting because we had all of that paper trail on all of that, and obviously where the roof is collapsed. So subsequent to that, that's the entomologist. They've moved in. Obviously, whenever you move into any property, there's always little hidden niggles that you never know about in terms of doors and this and that and windows, etc., etc. But a roof, nobody ever goes in and really ever inspects. So 6 months down the line, after these heavy rains and the section of the roof now collapses, what does the seller do when they phone me and go, what do we do? And I'm going, I have no idea, but let me find out.
So obviously your purchaser is going to be aggrieved. They've got a beautiful new home they've moved into, and they are quite happy until the roof collapses in on them. So in terms of the legal perspective, when you purchase a property, it is VOETSTOETS, right? Although we have the disclosures annexure, and that's a nice to have, it's a good opportunity for the seller to say there are these defects. However, they are latent and you can't see them, but I'm just warning you that they exist. Or they are patent, and I'm also letting you know. So you have the disclosure annexure, but VOETSTOETS still applies. So VOETSTOETS essentially is buyer beware. It's essentially you buying an already used product, something that has been in existence, that potentially has issues, and you're buying it on the face of it, you've inspected it, you're happy with the quality of it, which is this home, right?
And it is a second-hand home, as you say, because it is generally older than 60 years old if it's in Durban North.
Yes, absolutely. So there's that element to it. What then comes from that is when you purchase a property, and at the moment you become the registered owner of that property, risk into that asset passes. Right? So over and above VOETSTOETS disclosures, we've got the law of risk that
passes on registration date.
Passes on the date of registration, unless your agreement provides otherwise. But certainly at the latest point would be on registration and transfer. So once you are the registered owner of this home, you own all the risk into that property as well. And that applies to everything.
So the massive lightning storm and the gate motor gets struck by lightning on date of registration of transfer, you are then responsible.
As the owner of the property, that is your responsibility.
Yes.
Anything can happen. You know,
Yes.
you could have a hailstorm and a tree could fall through the roof.
Yes.
All
Okay.
of these things are all the same, right?
Yes.
Although there potentially in this scenario was an existing weakness in the roof, there wasn't the damage to the roof at the time that the seller was aware of.
Yes.
So as a purchaser, when you buy a property, you're buying it FOOTSTOETS, and you assume the risk into that property and registration.
Yes. All right. And then if the seller was perhaps aware, so say for instance they had done renovations on the home a couple of years before, I'm just hypothetical now, and they'd done renovations and maybe seen one or two trusses needed support at that point, and then they did extra support, and then obviously they assume that it's all fixed, and now could a purchaser then potentially say, oh, but the seller knew and didn't disclose?
Well, you know, the limit to that is questionable, right? So if you are a seller that believes that there is potentially still an issue there, maybe you should have made that disclosure. However, as an owner of a property, when you own this property and 2 years ago you've now done repairs on your roof, you believe you've paid a service provider to come and repair this roof, to take that defect and into your property away. You've corrected it, you've remedied it, you've now got a safe roof because you were concerned that potentially it had fallen on your family.
Correct.
So at that point, you believe you've dealt with the defect.
Yes.
To make a disclosure of every kind of repair you've done on a property for the preceding years is an unfair obligation to place on a seller.
Yes.
I don't think that's reasonable.
So what is the time frame? I mean, I know risk on transfer.
Yes,
is that it?
So exactly that. And the time frame insofar as disclosing any repairs you've done, also, in my opinion, potentially is if you take the mandate and I've done the repairs a few days before, what is my obligation to notify you of the repairs? I don't think there is one.
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, when you've done the repair, you've seen to the problem.
Yes.
So to say there was a problem and I dealt with it is kind of obsolete anyway.
Yeah, the only one would be with damp. So if it's repaired and then you wait for the next rains, and at that point in time you go, oh, okay, hang on a minute, it's repaired because it hasn't leaked like it did prior to it being repaired. So then you go, okay, tick, that one is done. But yeah, generally speaking, once it's repaired and you've paid a service provider, and that's, I suppose, the point is we all employ different service providers to help solve the problem. We are not experts in every single field. And now there is a seller. So at some point in time, we have to go, okay, that's it, you as the purchaser.
And that is the benefit of having the FOOTSTOETS.
Yes. So just obviously just a hypothetical, I've just suddenly thought about it now. How would insurance be affected in something like this? Because insurance always hates to pay.
Yes, of course.
So do you think there would be, because I would just go, and I think a couple of us actually said at the time when, there's insurance, and just phone the insurer, which obviously, yes, they do need to phone the insurer to come out and hopefully assess and pay for everything, and hopefully they do, but it could also be an out potentially where the insurance company goes, no, hang on a minute, there's damage from before, so no.
So, you know, insurance usually is there in place and would repair any damage that happens due to an event, right?
Yes.
If it's a maintenance issue, you're going to find insurers will say, sorry, but you've not been maintaining your property and therefore we will not honor the claim.
Yes.
So it's A, is it a maintenance issue? And B, is it an event that caused the damage?
Okay.
Right? So that's usually that's their first thing.
Okay.
If they go and dig deeper and they find that there were repairs and the repairs weren't done correctly, etc., then potentially they look at repudiating, but that then is not something that your seller could be responsible for because he believed he had dealt with it
at the time. Okay.
And then effectively what it would be is an argument between the existing owner and the service provider because he is the one that did the business, the job the repairs, and insufficiently or deficiently.
So at what point could a purchaser and should a purchaser potentially start any litigation process against a seller? What type of work or background information would they really need to have to lay a claim if they really felt terribly aggrieved? What would you recommend in brief?
I think in that instance they would have to obviously look and see how much history there is there.
Yeah.
Was there damage before? Was it in fact repaired? Okay. When it comes to claims of this nature, they've got to go to court and prove that A, the seller was aware of the existing damage and refused to disclose it or didn't disclose it.
Yes.
And B, that they willfully withheld that information.
Okay.
And then there would be room for a claim. To what extent? Because 6 months later, there's potentially more damage that's taken place over that 6-month period.
Yes.
And to what percentage they would be liable for the repair work expense is then up to the courts to decide.
So again, with the cost of courts, etc., sometimes it's actually just easier just to sort the problem out and just go, you know.
Yes. I mean, look, litigation is not, litigation is
it's not always easy to do that, I know.
And what's more is, it's obviously up to the court, right? So these are all subjective.
Absolutely, you know, we're just throwing out scenarios.
But also how much proof can these people get, whether the seller actually was, you know, hiding this information.
Exactly.
So then it becomes a subjective question which the judge or magistrate has to answer. And your chances are obviously, for all intents and purposes, 50-50. So one, you would have spent the costs on the litigation. Two, you may be successful, but at what percentage? And through the costs, usually they would, if you were successful, they would order the costs against the defendant. So the seller would then have to pay his attorney's costs.
Yes.
But on a lower scale than potentially what the attorney charged.
So generally speaking, it's 6 months down the line. It's a very unfortunate event that part of the roof has collapsed, because obviously, you know, family are living in the home, and obviously after the rains, etc., and they need to get it fixed. But potentially not really the seller's responsibility at this point in time. So we've just got to just help them through, get the insurance sorted out, and make sure that insurance do actually assist them on all of that.
For sure. And you know, a lot of the time, especially even when we're dealing with a transaction where we're in the process of transfer, you know, these things can happen at any stage.
Yes.
They can happen once you've signed the sale agreement and before registration.
Yes.
You know, then we're dealing with a different game. Then the seller is still responsible, and they do have to repair it. But in any of these kinds of scenarios, we usually say to all of our clients, buyers, sellers, and agents, that the best thing to do is to open up the table for discussion.
Yes.
After registration, 6 months later, where
very different.
Your client is potentially overseas.
Yes.
It's a bit difficult to open that can of worms and have that discussion. So you've got to kind of weigh up the pros and cons of, you know, pursuing something like this.
Yes, and just do what I can to help my purchaser get through this process at the moment. Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much, Kirsten. Anything else you want to just add in there that we may have not covered? I think covered quite a bit there this morning. Yeah, thank you. And it was quite interesting just having a little scenario specifically to speak about, rather than always just having my questions. So thank you so much for that. And yeah, thanks very much for allowing us to come and enjoy a coffee here at the Pencil. Yeah, lovely. Thanks so much, everyone. Please just keep sending through all your questions and suggestions, and remember to watch my coffee chat every Thursday at 8:30, and then every day I do little stories just while I'm out and about. So just enjoy all of that, and we'll see you all next Thursday. Send them through. Cheers. Bye.